Works.
And I ordered for my birthday. And then I ordered again last night.
Hello, world.
Yeah, guys, I'm 30. Yeah, it's
All right. So we'll just give this a minute.
Oh, good.
You feel like the mayor innovative, everything like going on. Like, why didn't you do the hair program? You're not seeing anybody. Nothing's happening. I mean, I don't know why everybody wants to dye their hair. You want to cocoon. And then you come out looking fabulous. Everybody else is going to come out looking like shit. Oh, I had to order an eyebrow machine, a trimming thing.
Right. Let's get started, Sasha. Just so you know, there's a little bit of noise in your background, but we should be okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So welcome everybody to the Greater Boston Young Democrats May monthly policy chat. My name is Andrew Putnam. I am the policy chair, and today we're going to be talking about menstrual legislation. And we have with us our guest speaker for this policy chat, Sasha Goodfriend, who is the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the National Organization for Women. So welcome, Sasha. Thanks for being with us today.
Of course, I'm so happy to be here and to talk about periods every day, all day.
We're excited to learn more. So tell us a bit about Mass Now as an organization and what you guys do.
Sure. So Mass Now was founded over 50 years ago, and we are a multi-issue, multi-strategy grassroots feminist organization working for a feminist future now. And so we do this in a few different ways. We have 3 different branches of our organization. We have the Mass Now Inc., which lobbies for feminist legislation at the State House, which is where the I Am bill is right now. We also have the Mass Now Foundation that educates our community and convenes feminist community around feminist issues and feminist policy options. And then we also have the Mass Now PAC, which is a political action committee that endorses feminist candidates for office and works to get them elected. So all 3 of these arms of our organization are part of our multi-strategy volunteer member-led organization to create a feminist culture here in Massachusetts. And I should say we're a state chapter of the National Organization for Women, and there's 35 other state now chapters with many more local chapters all over the country.
Wow, wonderful. I mean, that's pretty impressive to be throughout 35 states. Probably would be better to be through 50, and I'm hoping you guys are in all 50 eventually.
Me too.
So with Mass Now, today we're talking about menstrual legislation. And I mean, one of the questions that's probably on a lot of the viewers' minds right now is, what is menstrual legislation? Can you tell us what this is?
Sure. So I think menstrual legislation is just legislation around menstruation, and menstrual equity legislation is legislation to increase access to menstrual products, because in 32 states around the country right now, menstrual products like tampons are taxed as luxury items. So that's a sales tax on top of the already cost of menstrual products. Massachusetts doesn't actually have a tax on menstrual products, which was not done through legislation. It was actually just done coincidentally 13, 15 years ago through a general reform on medical devices and taxes. So in the menstrual equity legislation landscape, there's lots of states who are working just to repeal the tampon tax. But what we have the opportunity to do here in Massachusetts is to be the first state in the country to make sure that menstrual products are free in schools, prisons, and shelters. Because, you know, this is not a cheap thing. Almost 70% of American women use tampons exclusively for their menstrual product. And so you can imagine that over the course of a lifetime, that cost really does add up. And I didn't know until I was getting into and researching menstrual legislation that you can't use WIC or SNAP, which is like food stamps, or FEMA for emergencies. Any of these federal funds for low-income poor people can't be used for menstrual products. And so not only are we trying to make them cheaper, we're trying to make them free, because toilet paper is free and non-menstruators go to the bathroom all the time and we don't even think about it. You just expect there to be toilet paper and you expect there to be soap, and non-menstruators, and menstruators can't, often get their period without having the supplies that they need. 85%, according to one study from the Harris Institute. So we know that there is a need. And we know that this legislation works also, because even though Massachusetts has the opportunity to be the first state to do this, this legislation was actually passed in New York City on the city level in 2016. And coincidentally, New York City is like the same size in terms of its student population and homeless population as the state of Massachusetts. But we're really seeing the movement around period poverty and menstrual legislation around the country that I think is showing that, after the tampon tax, like this I am bill, this value of having menstrual products be public good that the state provides is, I think, the best practice. Because we know that there are studies that have been done around the country, in New York and in Massachusetts, that show that students are missing school because they don't have access to menstrual products. And so this is an issue of educational equity in addition to economic equity, and then of course health equity, because in fact people use unhygienic substitutes all the time for period products when they don't have them, like socks or lots of toilet paper, or trying to keep the same product in for too long. And shelters also are populations where only one other state, Maryland, has on the state level ensured free access to menstrual products in shelters. But the size of the homeless population is a tenth of the size of the student population, and it's actually even easier to organize in a way because we already have a shelter system. And so we've been doing work since we've introduced this bill last year to work with schools and with shelters and with sheriffs to talk about what would work for them in terms of implementing this new policy initiative. So that's like an overview, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of information, but very, very informative. I mean, that's a couple things that you mentioned in there that I don't think I knew. Maybe a lot of other people don't know. I think one of the things that maybe we don't think about often, especially if we divide things along gender lines, is I don't think about what's available in a bathroom for someone who's, a female. I think of only what's in the bathroom for someone who's a male. So very, very interesting to know that, these are the things that we're lacking as a society. And, maybe we all need to start wrapping our heads around, what if I walked into a bathroom and didn't have toilet paper? Well, that's a problem. And this is a problem too.
Totally. That's the most common thing that I hear when I talk about this is that like, oh, I just never thought about it. And I think there's a few interesting things that are part of that. One is that, menstruators have been menstruating literally forever, right? Like It's not new that we've been menstruating. And yet menstruators have been quiet. Like there's this huge taboo around talking around menstruation in our culture and in cultures around the world. And that taboo, I think, is so fascinating and so powerful. How is something so ubiquitous been so silenced and invisible? And there's a lot of shame around menstruation and like women's bodies in general and things that are natural that prevent a lot of self-education for people, like menstruators ourselves. Like a lot of menstruators don't even know what's happening to them sometimes because we don't get menstruation education. So I hear so many stories of even, menstruators being like, I didn't know. Like my mom, my dad, my parents, I didn't have a parent figure, my school didn't know it. People don't talk about it in media too. And when we do talk about it, we encourage silence and secrecy. And you can see that in our advertisements when they use like blue dye to represent periods, or when they advertise making tampons so small that you can just like pass it to someone in class without anyone noticing. All of that reinforces the stigma and is actually a huge part of what Mass Now and the menstrual equity movement is working to address, because we know that policy will ensure access, but breaking the stigma is also a real goal at changing culture, changing hearts and minds. Also, something that I think a lot about in terms of how new this issue is that this is the first time in Massachusetts history that we've ever talked about periods at the State House. And I knew that when we introduced this bill, that it was the first time that the legislature was going to deal with menstruation as a topic. But I didn't realize what that meant until we went to our hearing in September for the Public Health Committee. And we filled the hearing room with menstrual activists, all wearing red. Coincidentally, we just knew that we had to show up wearing red. And we told our period stories about not having the products we needed or getting our period unexpectedly and bleeding through our clothes, bleeding through the chairs, not having, being like embarrassed at school or just not going to school or using all of these things that have never been talked about in general. And then for them to be talked about in the State House as a public health issue was incredibly powerful. And I think it resonated with legislators too, because the bill was passed out of the committee just a couple of months later, though now we are in a different holding pattern.
So all very valuable information. And as we already touched on, some of it being eye-opening for some of us, especially for myself too here, things I didn't know. And I'm very glad you're with us today to educate us on these issues and bring to light these things. And I know you touched on it a little bit when you were talking about menstrual legislation and what it is. But could you go into a little more details to what is the I Am bill? I understand that you and the Massachusetts chapter of Now is working on the I Am bill in the State House. And as you just said, you went there to talk about menstrual legislation to them. So what is the I Am bill? What will it do? How does it work? And more importantly, where do we learn more about it too?
Great question. So let me answer that one first. Right now, you can go to mathnow.org/IAM, and you can read everything I'm about to tell you about. You can read our bill summary. You can read our fact sheet around the current state of menstrual access in Massachusetts. You can read about research we've done with schools, shelters, and sheriffs, and national research. And you can, most importantly, download our advocacy toolkit, where you can download a testimony template and send your legislator your period story. Or even if you don't have a period story, just why you think Massachusetts should pass the IAM bill. So that's the action alert right now. I'll say it again later, but massnow.org/IAM. So first of all, IAM is an acronym for increased access to menstrual products. It's also I am unapologetic about being a menstruator. So there's two parts of the name. And specifically, the bill would make menstrual products, disposable menstrual products, so pads and tampons, free and accessible and in a non-stigmatized place in schools, 6 through 12, prisons and jails, and shelters, and emergency transition housing. So beyond the shelter system, or just any kind of state emergency temporary housing. And it's pretty much literally the same language that was passed in New York City. And so that's what the bill would do. We already have some examples of how this is done across the state that we can look to as well. So there's most questions we get are about the implementation, literally how would this work? And Cambridge was the first school system actually in the entire country in 2016 to already implement free period products in their bathrooms and for their students, because that's the key when we talk about accessibility, when we talk about stigma. Some schools have menstrual products in the nurse's office. And the thing is that that's not truly accessible, and there's a stigma attached to it. We want teachers and school administrators to be able to trust students that they know when they have their period and they know the supplies they need. And having to go to the nurse's office is extra time away from class, and it's even more embarrassing because it makes it seem like a medical issue as opposed to just a natural monthly thing that's happening. You wouldn't ask permission for toilet paper, you'd just be like, yeah. You wouldn't say how many squares do you need? You'd be like, how dare you ask me about how many squares I need? So those are important parts of this bill too. The other important part of this bill that I'm really proud that we were able to do right off the bat is that, and you might have noticed this as I'm talking, we're not talking actually in gendered language. We're not saying this is a woman's restroom thing or this is a woman and girls issue, because we know that not all women and girls menstruate. And also not all menstruators identify as a woman or a girl. And so we have a really active GSA network around the Commonwealth that we've been able to partner with, because our youth know, our LGBTQ, trans, non-binary youth know, and their schools know that this is a real issue. We have to be accommodating students of all gender identities in bathrooms. And so I'm really proud of the schools that have been able to show that we can put menstrual products in boys' bathrooms too, and the world keeps turning.
Really, really good. I'm going to make sure that we take note of where we can go to find more information on the bill, and also the go to that section of your website where we can download our own
massnow.org/IAM.
You
can download your testimony, the advocacy toolkit, where you have the testimony template.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that it's not just for menstruators to be able to send in their period story, but also for anybody else to be able to send in why they think menstrual products should be more accessible and available and without that stigma. And I'm glad you brought up the nurse's office piece to it as well, because what school child should have to go to the nurse's office to get menstrual products? If you're right. It makes absolute sense. And it can definitely be embarrassing. I mean, I remember school and there were a lot of things that were embarrassing about going to certain offices, and I can only imagine. I'm going to take note of that and make sure that we put that out there so that everybody knows that they can send in a testimonial to State House and get this moving.
Thank you.
Another question I have for you with all of this is, how has your advocacy strategy changed since this pandemic unfolded? You mentioned how you had the Mass Now organization at the State House, pushing for this legislation and speaking up about menstrual issues. And now, obviously, with COVID-19, we can't do that. We can't congregate in those large groups, and even the State House is now doing virtual sessions. So how do you continue to advocate when we can't physically be there to advocate?
Great question. So to give you some timeline for all of those of you who are not like in the State House timeline. So this is a 2-year legislative session. We're in the second year now in 2020 of a 2-year legislative session. September, we had our first hearing in the Joint Committee of Public Health, which was very exciting. October, we did a legislative briefing and a pop-up period art show at the State House, which was a lot of fun. And we had our National Period Day rally at City Hall in October. December, the bill was voted favorably out of the Public Health Committee. And let me give a shout out right now to our lead sponsors on the IAM bill, who have really been championing this important legislation in the building, while as advocates, we do our work outside of the building, getting support. And so Rep. Livingstone and Rep. Barber are our lead sponsors in the House, and Senator Jalen, with lots of enthusiastic support also from Senator Sear, are our lead sponsors in the Senate. And we do have the same language. We have introduced this bill in the House and the Senate, and it's the same language in both bills. And our House bill got sent from the clerk's office to the Joint Committee on Healthcare Financing, and the Senate bill got sent to Ways and Means. So that's where the bills are right now. And we plan a huge lobby day in March. We're really excited. We were gonna all go storm the State House. We had hundreds of matching t-shirts ready to go. And we have a coalition. March is the 1-year anniversary of our coalition, where we now have over 150 activists who are part of our coalition, and also almost 40 organizations that are part of this coalition from around the state. And you can sign up yourself as an individual and your organization to join this coalition, also on massnow.org/IAM. And beginning of March, the first week of March is when the pandemic unfolded, and it was hard to cancel our lobby day, but we reused it. First of all, you can do a virtual lobby day theoretically. That week, we didn't think was an appropriate week to lobby our legislators for the IAM bill, because they were still trying to figure out how do they meet, rules-wise, and also just crisis management in general. So we turned that day into a coalition briefing. So you can also watch that coalition briefing on our website or on our YouTube page. And the coalition briefing is still important because we're still educating people around this new issue. A lot of people still don't even know that this was an issue or that this is an issue that they can take action on. So where we are now in May is that the legislature has extended their deadlines through July for reporting on bills. And also the legislature is trying to figure out how much money they have to set the budget for next year, because we were hoping, and we were meeting with House leadership, and we were trying to lobby House leadership to include funding for this bill in next year's budget. And I read recently that revenue for April was 50% 2020 of what it was last year for the state. So I think in terms of lobbying, there's lots of questions that legislators just honestly still need to figure out. So I say it's definitely important for everyone to still contact their legislator, because if legislators aren't thinking about this bill, there's 1,000 more priorities that they will be thinking about, and it will not. And if there isn't a sense of urgency from people, if it's seen as an afterthought, it won't be included, because we are in a pandemic and there's a crisis right now. That said, this crisis and pandemic for me has been really reinforcing the need to invest in public health more than ever, because if you don't, these problems aren't going to get solved on their own necessarily. And by supporting our most vulnerable populations, we're actually supporting the whole society as a whole. And as a feminist policy entrepreneur, I think about that lens with all the bills that we're working on. Like when we were working on the equal pay bill, for example, that was the last big bill that Mass Now helped write and passed in 2016. And when that bill passed, it was the most comprehensive pay equity legislation in the country. So the IAM bill would be the most comprehensive menstrual equity legislation in the country. You can see Mass Now's just with a feminist equity lens in our legislation. And when we were talking about the equal pay bill, we kept saying, when we invest in women, we're actually investing in the whole family. And we see returns for the whole family in terms of their economics, but also their success in life in terms of career, and also then for the whole society. Like our whole state will be more successful if we are supporting menstruators in schools and in shelters. So I'm hoping that we can still focus our activism in this legislative session. But it's a pandemic, so we're taking it day by day.
There's definitely a lot we can do digitally, and I'm glad that you brought up some ways we can do this digitally. And it is a bit upsetting to know that, progress was kind of stalled, and understandably so. This is a crisis, and you can't predict it, and we kind of have to just work through it as we get to it. But I'm glad to know there are still ways we can continue to advocate for this bill and can continue to advocate for these things, even on a digital platform, rather than being in person. So with that being said, what can people do right now to take action to support the IM bill and address period poverty? I know we touched on some things that we can do, but what else is there? How else can we spread this message?
So there's one is contacting your legislator. If you don't already contact your legislator, you should definitely your state rep and your state senator. They really do care, and they really do want to hear from you if you're a constituent in their district, because they know that you are going to either vote for them or not to help them keep their job. So don't undervalue the power you have in contacting your legislator. Even if you think they know more than you, even if they've never heard from you, it doesn't matter. It's still their job and their staff's job to listen to you. Even if you don't think you know enough, it doesn't matter. You actually don't need to know any stats or data in order to have an opinion on a bill that you want passed. And what I tell Mass Now members and our community in general is that our truth, our lived experience, is actually all the experience you need to talk to your legislator. You can call them, they're still picking up their phones, or someone's still picking up their phones. You can email them, and they are still checking their emails. So that works. When we're thinking about the larger cultural work that we can do, you can talk about periods with your friends, over dinner. Even if you're doing a Skype dinner, you can talking about periods is part of breaking the stigma. So talk about periods, and Mass Now does consciousness raisings. This is actually how our organization was founded over 50 years ago. They're small group discussions, intimate, casual, around your living room, or kitchen table, or at a bar, where we're talking about our personal lives, about our personal experience. We're telling period stories. We're talking about childcare. We're talking about all of our priority issue areas. All these things that are typically hidden from the media and the public. And together, we're able to strengthen our personal narratives and also educate ourselves on the bills, so that by the end of the consciousness raising, attendees feel more empowered to take action on this bill. So Mass Now has been doing consciousness raisings in living rooms across the Commonwealth for 2 years, and we're now taking our consciousness raisings online. So we just had our first consciousness raising training this past Monday, and it was great. It was sold out. We had over 20 people come, and in our evaluation afterwards, I'll say that, so Mass Now we have 6 priority issue areas. The IAM bill is number 1. It's the one bill that we've written and we've founded the coalition and we are championing. But we've added more bills to our legislative agenda since this pandemic. We're part of an equity task force on the state level, and also we're part of some coalitions on the national level. Working for decarceration and a CPA leave right now, since we're successful in Massachusetts at the ending evictions and foreclosures. And so, at our consciousness raising training this past Monday, I went over all of the issues that Mass Now was working on, and then we had an evaluation afterwards, and was like, what issue do you want to lead a consciousness raising on? And periods was still the most popular topic. So we will be doing consciousness raisings online around periods during the pandemic this month and next month. So stay tuned to join us and meet other feminist communities, menstruators and non-menstruators alike, all are welcome. So advocate with your state rep or senator, talk to your friends and family, and convene your friends and family in a consciousness raising to more formally educate them. Those are all things that you can do. Wonderful. And actually, I should give one more important shout out. So the other thing that we did during our Menstrual Equity Coalition briefing on March 26th was we worked with Dignity Matters from Period.org to make sure that menstrual products were distributed to meal sites and to shelters across the Commonwealth, because most shelters don't have period products. And now people are, social distancing in place, and food pantries were already a place where we were recommending people go to get menstrual products, but they're some of the least donated items because we don't think about it. So people donate diapers more, they donate deodorant, like pantries I hear have deodorant galore, like they got lots of deodorant, but they don't have period products. And so we were able to fundraise and convene our coalition partners to do direct service of just getting 2 months of supplies of period products. And by we, I really mean Kate at Dignity Matters did an incredible job coordinating the funding and distribution of that. So there's, until the policy is placed, there have been informal systems all along. All shelters that most shelters don't have products, and if they do, they're donated. And so we already, as a culture and society, have been relying on donations. And I hope that this becomes a public good.
That's very helpful information, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's something I didn't know. I again, just as we've spoken about other things that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, I did not know, and I don't think many people are aware of that. Food banks don't have much in terms of menstrual products to disperse, but they've got plenty of deodorants. So the next time I donate to a food bank, I'll be sure to give food and menstrual products rather than deodorant and toilet paper, because it seems like they have plenty of that stuff. So thank you for bringing that up and letting everybody know that. This has been a lot of really good information, and I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to have you here today. And I just want to check to see if there's any questions from viewers today. Yeah. And I'm just looking now, and it doesn't look like there's much in the way of questions at this time. Although there is one question here that I think is really good to point out, actually, that did appear. How can men, especially straight identifying men, cis straight men, how can they be better allies in this?
I love that question. So, I think there's a few things. There's one, like the straight up donating products. That's pretty cool. And like, you know, doing the ally work of sending testimony and legislation, and also the ally work of talking about it as men. What I have been pleasantly surprised to find in my experience doing this work is that I think I was scared to talk to non-menstruators and men, straight white, older men about periods myself, because maybe I was assuming that they wouldn't be interested or that they'd be grossed out. And some are, but actually most people I've talked to have been really interested and they want to learn more. And so I think that it's important for us all to remember is not to like, you know, shut anyone else out of the conversation, but to really approach this from a place of curiosity. Like menstruators and non-menstruators alike, we all don't know that much about menstruation. Like we're not taught menstrual education in school. And so I think as many conversations as we can have would be the culture change work that we need to do as a society to break the stigma. So yeah. Talk about it and donate and submit testimony. Same thing.
Great. Wonderful. I mean, it's always best. It's always good to know how everybody can help, even if you're not in the shoes of the person who needs the help. So I'm really glad that you were able to provide some more information on that for us, and more ways that we can do things to be supportive and further move this forward. That being said, it doesn't look like we have much in the way of questions at this time. So, and I feel like we've gone through a lot of information, and we've been talking for 40 minutes, which is a pretty good amount of time. But we don't want to keep you on, you know, and take up more of your time if we don't have much else to go off of here. So what I think we should do is kind of wrap things up here. And this is a Facebook Live video that will continue to live on our page. So we'll be sure to make sure that everybody can see it. And if you could just one more time tell us where we can go for more information on menstrual legislation and to find out how we can help.
Sure thing. So go to massnow.org/IAM and you can sign up to join the coalition. You can read all about the bill and you can download our testimony toolkit to take action on it. If you also go to MassNow's website and click on volunteer, that's when you can click to be a consciousness raising host, and we will help you convene your own community to talk about periods. And the last thing I have to say, I'm not very good at saying this, but I'm going to start saying it more and more, is that we are a member-led movement. We're a grassroots organization, and we have just changed membership to be on a sliding scale. You can pay any amount and become an official MassNow member. And that's actually the only way we will survive as an organization and continue this work. And so please, please, please consider joining us in this movement and becoming a member also on our website.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sasha, for being here today. Thank you for talking to us about menstrual legislation, for educating us on all of these issues and how we can better be supporters, no matter who we are and where we are, and what we can do to further move this forward. So once again, this is Sasha, good friend with Mass Now, and thank you so much for being with us. And
thank you, Andrew, and the Young Dems. I appreciate you all giving us this platform.
Yes, absolutely. We would love to give a platform to these kinds of policy discussions. So thank you again for being with us.
Of course. Take care.
You too.
Bye.